In the early 1950s, Jaguar Cars and Dunlop embarked on a pioneering partnership that would forever change automotive braking. Their mission was to take a finicky bit of aircraft technology, the disc brake, and adapt it for high-performance automobiles. At the time, virtually all cars relied on drum brakes, a technology effective in principle, but prone to dangerous fade under hard use. This essay chronicles the development and use of the Dunlop disc brake system in Jaguar's racing and road cars, from early experiments through its full implementation by 1961. It is a story of technical innovation, rigorous testing, and motorsport glory. A narrative that begins with wartime innovations and culminates in Jaguar's stunning E-Type sports car. Early experiments and inspiration. Although disc brakes would become revolutionary on Jaguar's cars, the concept was not entirely new. In fact, engineers had experimented with disc-type brakes as far back as the late 19th century, and by the 1920s, some aircraft manufacturers, like Sikorsky, were already adopting disc brakes to cope with the higher speeds and weights of new airplanes. During World War II, disc brake systems were further refined for aviation and armoured vehicles where traditional drum brakes proved inadequate. By the late 1940s, Dunlop, a British company known for tyres and industrial rubber, had successfully developed disc brakes for military aircraft, demonstrating their superior stopping power and resistance to fade in a single hard application, such as a fighter plane's landing. Translating this technology to automobiles, however, posed new challenges. Unlike aircraft, cars, especially in endurance racing or spirited road use, must brake repeatedly, rapidly dissipating heat to avoid fade. Early post-war attempts at automotive disc brakes were rare and not without problems. One notable prelude came in the USA. The 1949 Crosley Hotshot sports car briefly used disc brakes, though issues like corrosion forced a return to drums. In Britain, engineer Frederick Lanchester had patented a basic disc brake idea as early as 1902, but materials and hydraulics were not yet up to the task. The stage was set for Jaguar and Dunlop to turn the disc brake from an experimental concept into a practical reality. Jaguar and Dunlop, a partnership in innovation. Jaguar's interest in advanced brakes was driven by competition. After winning the 1951 24 Hours of Le Mans with its XK120C, later known as the C-Type on conventional drum brakes, Jaguar knew that higher speeds and tougher rivals lay ahead. Drum brakes of the era, even with aluminium drums and hydraulic actuation, suffered from a fatal flaw. As friction converts a car's kinetic energy into heat, drums tend to trap that heat. Prolonged hard braking would cause drums to overheat and fade, dramatically reducing braking effectiveness. Jaguar's engineers, under racing manager Lofty England and engineering director William Haynes, recognized that to stay competitive they needed a brake that could withstand the rigors of endurance racing without fading. Dunlop's disc brake technology, proven in aircraft but untested on cars, offered a promising solution. Thus, in 1951, a collaborative project was born. Dunlop's design team, led by engineer Harry Westlake, better known for combustion research but deeply involved in Jaguar's racing efforts, and others, began adapting their aircraft disc brake for Jaguar's C-Type racing cars. Jaguar provided cars, drivers, and testing facilities, while Dunlop provided the hardware and engineering know-how. Technical aspects of the Dunlop system included a simple steel rotor disc, clamped by calipers with hydraulic pistons, pressing friction pads against both sides of the disc. Unlike drum brakes, which have broad shoe-to-drum contact but enclose heat, the disc presented only a small pad area, roughly 1/8 of the disc's surface, in contact at any time, leaving the rest exposed to open air for cooling. The design was elegantly simple and inherently self-releasing. When hydraulic pressure from the brake pedal was removed, the slight run-out of the disc, or elastic properties of the seal, would push the pads back enough to free the wheel, with no return springs needed. Several key advantages of Dunlop's disc brake quickly became evident. Fade resistance. The disc's open design shed heat far more effectively than a drum. This meant the brakes could endure repeated high-speed stops with much less risk of fade. In theory, the disc and pad could sustain harder, more frequent braking before any loss of friction occurred. Superior stopping power. For its size and weight, the disc setup produced immense braking force. It was also more linear and controllable. The brake pedal became something drivers could truly lean on with confidence, rather than a mere footrest that might betray them after a few hard uses. Compact and light. The disc and caliper assembly was generally lighter and more compact than equivalent drum brakes, reducing unsprung weight, especially when discs were mounted inboard, as later Jaguar designs would do, and allowing better packaging in a low aerodynamic car. All-weather performance. Unlike drums, disc brakes perform reliably in wet conditions. Water is quickly flung off by the spinning disc, and the first application of the pads tends to sweep the disc surface dry. Jaguar drivers found that even in rain, their disc brakes bit consistently, a notable safety and performance improvement. Maintenance and consistency. Discs had the benefit of easier servicing, pads could be replaced more easily than relining drums, and more consistent behavior. There was no need for frequent adjustment to compensate for wear or drum expansion. As long as hydraulic pressure reached the caliper, the pads would self-adjust to maintain effective contact. This consistency under all conditions gave drivers additional confidence. However, adapting disc brakes to a car was not as simple as bolting on aircraft parts. One development challenge was heat within the brake fluid. In early testing, Jaguar's drivers, including the young Sterling Moss and chief tester Norman Dewis, reported an alarming phenomenon. After repeated hard stops, the Dunlop calipers ran so hot that the brake fluid would boil in the lines. Boiling created gas bubbles in the hydraulic fluid, leading to a spongy pedal or sudden loss of brakes, effectively another kind of fade. Over the winter of 1951 to 52, Jaguar and Dunlop attacked this problem through both improved fluid high boiling point hydraulic fluids and better caliper and pad design. They increased pad size and experimented with materials that could endure 24-hour punishment. By early 1952, Dunlop had developed thicker, more durable brake pads that could last an endurance race without needing replacement, a critical breakthrough for viability in events like Le Mans. Testing on the track, trials and breakthroughs. Jaguar's first real-world trial of the new disc brake system came in 1952. Rather than debut the technology at Le Mans, the world's biggest endurance race, without prior experience, Jaguar tested it in shorter competition and record attempts. One early experiment was at the Goodwood Easter meeting in April 1952, where a Jaguar C-Type, chassis XKC003, freshly outfitted with Dunlop disc brakes, was entered for Sterling Moss to drive. Even with this cutting-edge advantage hidden behind its wire wheels, the car faced a strong field of more conventional racers. Moss managed to set the fastest lap of the day, exploiting the Jaguar's ability to brake later and harder than its drum-braked rivals. However, teething troubles emerged. Towards the end of the race, the C-Type's braking performance flagged as the fluid boiling issue reared its head, and Moss ultimately finished fourth. This outcome was a qualified success. The speed was there, but the reliability was not yet bulletproof. A greater test came in June 1952 at Ramsgau Circuit in France. Rams hosted a sports car race, the 12 Hours of Rams, and was known for long, high-speed straights, not unlike Le Mans. Jaguar entered a C-Type with disc brakes, again piloted by Sterling Moss. This time the combination proved formidable. On 29 June 1952, Moss drove the disc-braked Jaguar to victory at Reims, averaging about 158 kilometers per hour, 98 miles per hour. It was the first time in international motorsport history that a car equipped with disc brakes had won a race. The significance of this win was not lost on the competition. Jaguar had demonstrated that when the system held together, it conferred a decisive advantage. Moss reported that he could brake later than anyone else, trusting the Dunlop discs not to fade. Importantly, the thicker endurance brake pads developed by Dunlop lasted the distance at Rams, proving the concept's viability for a 12-hour event. Emboldened by the Rams' success, Jaguar made disc brakes its secret weapon for the upcoming 24 Hours of Le Mans in 1952. The context was daunting. Mercedes-Benz was returning to sports car racing with the new 300 SL, and other European rivals were strong. Jaguar focused on two areas for Le Mans 52: improved aerodynamics for higher top speed, and the new disc brakes for better stopping. The C-Type's body was redesigned into a low-drag form for 1952, but this experiment went awry. The streamlined bodywork caused engine cooling problems in the race, leading to all three Jaguar entries retiring early with overheating engines. Because the cars dropped out prematurely, the disc brake system never got a chance to shine at Le Mans that year. The Jaguars simply didn't last long enough for their brakes to make a difference. It was a sobering setback. Not due to the brakes. But it showed that cutting-edge innovation can bring unforeseen complications. The team went back to Coventry with valuable lessons. For 1953, reliability and balance would be paramount. Jaguar reverted to a proven body design and concentrated on perfecting the brake system rather than radical new aerodynamics. Le Mans, 1953, proving the disc brake advantage. Jaguar's victory at Le Mans in 1953 was a landmark demonstration of disc brake superiority. On June 13th to 14th, 1953, a trio of works Jaguar C-Types lined up at the Circuit de la Sarthe, each fitted with Dunlop's now well-sorted disc brakes. The team had kept this development relatively low profile. After the previous year's failure, few outsiders suspected how transformative the new brakes could be. From the start of the 24-hour marathon, it was evident that the Jaguars could decelerate with astonishing effectiveness. Drivers Tony Rolt and Duncan Hamilton, in Jaguar C-Type number 18, found they could postpone braking until perilously late at the end of the Mulsanne Straight, where speeds approached 240 km per hour, 150 miles per hour. Lap after lap, the Dunlop discs hauled the cars down from high speed without fade, a feat that drum-braked competitors struggled to match. Jaguar's pit crew watched rivals repeatedly adjust, or even change drum brake components due to fade and wear, while the C-Types needed no such attention. The result was a historic 1-2 finish for Jaguar, and also fourth place, a walkover, in the words of one historian. Rolt and Hamilton's winning C-Type set a record, becoming the first car to average over 100 miles per hour for the entire 24 hours of Le Mans. In fact, they covered 4,088 kilometers in 24 hours, which was 477 kilometers farther than Jaguar's 1951 winning distance, given that the 1953 car's engine output was only modestly higher than in 1951, about 20 horsepower more. This dramatic improvement in average speed was largely attributed to the new braking system. The fade-free Dunlop disc brakes allowed the drivers to maintain a blistering pace deep into each braking zone, gaining precious seconds at every corner with confidence and consistency. It was said that in 1953, Jaguar braked with the drum tradition literally and figuratively, ending the reign of drum brakes at the top level of sports car racing. The triumph also nicely coincided with Britain's coronation year, adding patriotic luster to the technological achievement. The impact of that Le Mans victory was immediate. The disc brake, once an unproven novelty, had been vindicated under the most demanding conditions. After seeing the Jaguars stop lap after lap with undiminished power, competitors took notice. As Jaguar's win grabbed headlines, Dunlop suddenly found inquiries coming from other teams interested in adopting disc brakes. Indeed, 1953 marked a turning point. In subsequent years, more and more race cars would switch to discs, and the technology would trickle into road cars. Jaguar's achievement had essentially popularized disc brakes in motorsport, establishing a new standard. In the words of Jaguar's own heritage team, the C-Type's disc brake innovation became an automotive standard following its success. The D-Type era, refinement and dominance. Having proven disc brakes in combat, Jaguar wasted no time applying them to its next racer, the legendary Jaguar D-Type. Debuting in 1954, the D-Type was a cutting-edge machine with a monocoque chassis and aerodynamic shape, inspired by aircraft principles, courtesy of engineer Malcolm Sayer. It carried the same 3.4-litre XK engine, later enlarged to 3.8 litres, and crucially Dunlop four-wheel disc brakes on all corners. Over the next few years, the D-Type would cement Jaguar's dominance at Le Mans, in no small part thanks to those superior brakes. In the 1955 Le Mans, a D-Type won again, this time in very tragic circumstances, as a catastrophic crash overshadowed the race. The Jaguar of Mike Hawthorne and Ivor Bube took the victory. While the win was marred by events, it underscored Jaguar's performance edge. By 1956, disc brakes were still not universally adopted by rivals. For example, Aston Martin and Ferrari persisted with drum brakes a bit longer. And this gave Jaguar an endurance racing advantage. At Le Mans 1956, factory D-Types faltered, but a private Scottish team, Écurie Écosse, won with a year-old D-Type, proving that even an independent entrant, armed with Jaguar's braking technology, could best the factory teams of other marques. Then came Le Mans 1957, where disc brakes truly helped Jaguar achieve a rout. That year, the competition from Ferrari, Maserati and Aston Martin was fierce. Their cars were more powerful on paper. But the D-Types excelled on the long straights and fast corners of Le Mans. The D-Type's slippery aerodynamic shape gave it high speed, and its Dunlop disc brakes provided not just stopping power but also longevity. As one account notes, the D-Type's brakes were a boon for their durability as much as their power, crucial in a 24-hour grind where consistent braking performance was vital. The result, Jaguar D-Types, mostly entered by private teams, swept the top spots, finishing first, second, third, fourth, and sixth in the 1957 24 Hours of Le Mans. It was a dominant finale to Jaguar's factory racing program of the 1950s. After that, Jaguar withdrew from works racing, having secured 5 Le Mans wins: 1951, 1953, 1955, 1956, 1957, with their C and D types. Throughout the D-Type era, Jaguar and Dunlop continued to refine the braking hardware. The basic system remained a hydraulic caliper, squeezing a steel disc, but there were incremental improvements. Alloy caliper housings were used to save weight and better dissipate heat. Pad compounds evolved, and by the late 1950s, Dunlop even experimented with adding a simple mechanical anti-lock device, the Maxarette system, on test cars to prevent wheel lock-up under braking, an innovation far ahead of its time. Though Maxarette ABS would not see production on a Jaguar in this era, the fact that Jaguar tested it on a C-Type and later a Mark 7 saloon showed how far ahead their thinking was in brake development. The collaboration between Jaguar and Dunlop was truly symbiotic. Jaguar's racing success was a rolling laboratory for Dunlop, and the improvements Dunlop made fed back into Jaguar's continued dominance. By the end of the 1950s, any serious performance car, on track or road, was expected to have disc brakes or be left behind. Aston Martin and Ferrari had finally switched to disc brakes on their racing cars by 1959-60, acknowledging the new reality that Jaguar and Dunlop had proven years earlier. From racetrack to road, adopting disc brakes in production. Jaguar's philosophy under founder William Lyons was to translate lessons from racing into improvements for production cars wherever feasible. The disc brake was a prime example of this ethos. Having seen the clear superiority of Dunlop discs on the track, Jaguar moved to introduce them on road-going models with remarkable swiftness. The transition began with limited production and high-performance editions, eventually spreading to mainstream models by the end of the 1950s. The first road-going Jaguar to sport disc brakes was a batch of Jaguar XK140s modified in 1956. These were essentially test mules for the upcoming newer model. A few XK140 sports cars were equipped with Dunlop disc brakes, possibly as a factory-supported experiment for racing-oriented customers. However, the true milestone came with the Jaguar XK150, launched in May 1957. The XK150 was an evolution of the XK sports car line, and it became one of the very first production cars in the world to feature four-wheel disc brakes as standard equipment. In Jaguar's sales literature, a standard XK150 with drums was theoretically offered, but in practice every XK150 built for sale was equipped with the special equipment package of four-wheel Dunlop disc brakes. This made headlines in the motoring press. The XK150's Dunlop brakes were its main talking point, allowing the car to exploit its powerful 3.4-litre and later 3.8-litre engine, with confidence that the stopping power matched the speed. Drivers of the XK150 immediately noticed the improved pedal feel and fade-free performance on twisty roads, a direct trickle-down of Jaguar's Le Mans experience. One period report declared that the advantages of Dunlop disc brakes had been made available to the everyday driver of a Jaguar sports car, bringing racing-grade stopping power to the road. Jaguar didn't stop with sports cars. Its luxury saloons also received the upgrade, underscoring that disc brakes were as much about safety as performance. In October 1958, Jaguar introduced the Mark IX Saloon, a large four-door luxury car, and made a bold decision. The Mark IX became the first Jaguar sedan with standard four-wheel servo-assisted Dunlop disc brakes. This was a notable industry first. Few, if any, luxury cars at that time had four-wheel discs. The Mark IX's braking system even included a vacuum booster and a reserve tank, reflecting Jaguar's attention to making the powerful new brakes user-friendly and fail-safe for the average motorist. With power-assisted steering and 220 brake horsepower on tap, the big Mark IX needed strong brakes, and it got them. Contemporary tests lauded the Mark IX's braking as sports car-like, despite its nearly 2-ton mass. Jaguar's willingness to equip its heaviest model with disc brakes proved that the technology was robust and refined enough for all applications, not just race cars. By 1960, the majority of Jaguar's lineup had embraced disc brakes. The smaller Mark II Saloon, launched in 1959, was among the first compact sedans in the world to feature four-wheel disc brakes. And in fact, it famously carried a small badge on its rear bumper warning tailing drivers that the Jaguar could stop on disc brakes. A light-hearted alert that this saloon's braking might be much stronger than what they expected from an ordinary car. Other manufacturers in Britain followed Jaguar's lead. The Triumph TR3 sports car got front discs in 1956. Aston Martin made discs standard on the DB4 in 1958, and even abroad, icons like the 1955 Citroën DS featured front disc brakes. What had begun as Jaguar and Dunlop's secret weapon in racing was now rapidly becoming the gold standard for performance automobiles. Legacy by 1961, the E-Type and industry impact. By the dawn of the 1960s, disc brakes were no longer an exotic racing curiosity. They were an expected feature on high-end and high-performance cars, and increasingly on regular cars as well. Much of this transformation traced directly back to Jaguar's early advocacy and Dunlop's engineering. The ultimate expression of this legacy appeared in 1961, when Jaguar unveiled what would become its most famous road car, the Jaguar E-Type, XKE in North America. The E-Type encapsulated all the racing innovations Jaguar had honed in the 1950s, from its lightweight aerodynamic construction to its powerful XK engine, and, of course, four-wheel Dunlop disc brakes. Advanced features on the E-Type included a fully independent suspension and inboard-mounted rear disc brakes, situated next to the differential. A design aimed at reducing unsprung weight and mirroring racing practice. Few production cars could match this setup in 1961. The E-Type's braking system had dual circuits, a safety feature borrowed from racing prototypes, and was servo-assisted, giving it both the bite of a race car and the civility needed for road use. With these brakes, the E-Type could decelerate from its 240+ km/h top speed with remarkable stability and repeatability. Test drivers and journalists marveled that such a beautiful road-going car had stopping power on par with the latest Le Mans contenders. This was no coincidence. It was the direct result of Jaguar and Dunlop's decade-long refinement of disc brakes. The impact on the automotive industry by 1961 was profound. After Jaguar's 1953 Le Mans win, it took less than a decade for disc brakes to go from experimental to essential. Other manufacturers rushed to catch up. By the early 1960s, companies like MG, Ferrari, and Porsche were fitting disc brakes to their sports models. Even American marques eventually adopted front discs, with the 1963 Studebaker Avanti and 1965 Chevrolet Corvette, for example. In motorsport, it became unthinkable to contest a top-tier race without discs. The last drum-braked overall victory at Le Mans was in 1952, and thereafter, disc brakes reigned. The legacy of the Jaguar-Dunlop development is perhaps best summed up by Jaguar's own retrospective acknowledgement that the C-Type's disc brake innovation became an automotive standard. What started as Jaguar's secret weapon had evolved into a new industry norm for safety and performance. By the time the Jaguar E-Type was released in 1961, disc brakes were a selling point and a symbol of modern engineering. Jaguar proudly advertised the E-Type's racing-derived Dunlop disc brakes, knowing that customers associated them with winning pedigree and superior performance. As a narrative coda, it's worth noting that Sir Stirling Moss, one of the pioneers who first raced the disc-braked C-Type, would later quip that before disc brakes, a racing driver's brake pedal was often a nice place to rest your foot while you had an accident. With the advent of the disc brake, thanks in large part to Jaguar and Dunlop, the brake pedal truly became a tool for confident control. This revolution in stopping power saved countless seconds on the track and countless lives on the road. In sum, between 1952 and 1961, Jaguar and Dunlop not only won races, they spearheaded a brake technology revolution that left an indelible mark on automotive history. This has been a production by Curious Jag. Please like and subscribe.